first presented this concept of Five Harmonies at the World Economy Forum in the summer of 2012 at Davos. In his speech, Venerable Master Xing Yi saying, everyone can certainly enjoy individual harmony that is achieved through peace, interpersonal harmony that is achieved through respect, family harmony that is achieved through difference, social harmony that is achieved through cooperation, and world harmony that is achieved through also peace. The five harmonies listed above are the idea of a society. Only through harmony can wealth be acquired. Harmony is what gives everything meaning and value. But how can we help people to achieve the spiritual transformation and bring harmony into our daily life and society? In this speech, Master Xing Yi told us that during times when we encounter any difficulties in a harsh situation, what we need to establish is faith. It is faith that brings confidence and strength. Since time immemorial, as a result of confidence in values that are good and beautiful, humans have been able to improve our lives, take control our future, and strive for greater social welfare. Faith can enhance our moral value and personal integrity. Therefore, people in the world and any society can embrace the diversity and accept difficulty with the equality and tolerance, and compassion and harmony, which means oneness and coexistence. In Humanistic Buddhism, Venerable Master Xing Yi guides us to promote equality for all through the idea of oneness, and to propagate the spirits of kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity through the idea of coexistence. When we can set aside our selfishness and prejudice in order to help each other, we are also respecting the right of every living being to exist. We all know that when all the rivers flow into the ocean, they will only have one taste, the taste of saltiness. When we learn to accept changes or differences in our lives, we will have the joy and harmony in our life. We must keep these 3 points in mind. The first is to adopt the characteristic and methods of others in a positive, willing, and prudent manner, provided these are beneficial to the human race. The second, to nourish the world, the human race, and their universal interdependence by understanding the richness and expansiveness of the Dharma, provided we possess an exhausted aspiration. The final, to accept civilization and its advance that enlightened self and others by taking actions that are harmonious, reciprocal, and communicative, provided we have a righteous heart and a sincere mind. If we all could follow Venerable Master Xing Yi's teaching and guiding, we can achieve individual harmony. Then, within our things are in the personal, family, society harmony, and the final, world harmony and peace. Thank you so much for listening. And then this is all. all I can say from our masters guiding and teaching how we can help people to achieve the to achieve their happiness in their life through these 5 harmonies. Thank you.
Thank you.
Back to you, Alex.
Thank you so much, Sifu. Oh, sorry, guys, I forgot to mention that. When it's about 1 minute up, I will just say 1 minute, so you guys can just don't need to stress about your timing. I will be doing timing on the side. Okay. Sorry, Sifu, I forgot to tell you, but you are with you keeping your time. Thank you so much. Okay. Please come welcome. Unmute yourself, please, Professor B and Sifu, please.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, buddy.
Hello, everyone.
Yes, we can all hear you clearly. You have 10 minutes.
Thank you very much. I think I will start. That was such a wonderful welcome speech. Thank you so much, Venerable Yao Wang. Thank you, everybody, for the opportunity to me to speak here. Actually, when I first read Venerable Master Xing Yun's teaching on the 5 harmonies, I was a bit surprised, because clearly harmony, or he, is a cultural Chinese concept that features in Confucian and Taoist classics, and that has then engraved itself in Chinese thought historically, mainly in the Neo-Confucian era. So just to be sure, I did a quick Taisho search, and yes, indeed, the concept does not feature in the Buddhist sutras. And when I realized that, I was full of honest admiration for Venerable Master Xing Yun and his skillful means. Once again, he uses this expedient means of a key cultural concept in the Sinophone world, and to utilize it and to, as it were, re-infuse it resourcefully with Buddhist thought for the human world. Because, of course, if we look at the 5 harmonies, as they have been beautifully summarized by Venerable Yao Wang now, the first harmony in one's own mind is defined with a key classical Buddhist term, le, which in Buddhist translation literature, for instance, at Paramarta's translations, is one word used for moksha, liberation. So the first harmony is really, in terms of Yogacara philosophy, resting in mind itself and equivalent with sukha or moksha. And that is the basis then for the following harmonies as I can see them and I understand them. Because if we now go from this absolute level to the preliminary level in the second, where it is about respect, there we find the level of interconnection, of interdependency, harmony with each other, pratitya samutpada, or if we stay with Yogacara philosophy, this is paratantra svabhava in the Trisvabhava doctrine. So from these two fundamental Buddhist states, mind as an absolute and interbeing as paratantra svabhava, flows then again 3 really, really wonderfully Chinese cultural virtues and teachings that are from the earliest Confucian classics grouped together: family, state, and world. So this is amazing. Venerable Master skillfully adds here Chinese Confucian thought and brings it to life in his humanistic Buddhist ideas. And I was so happy just to hear Venerable Yao Wang mentioning the 4 immeasurables, because you can also see the 4 later harmonies, if we leave out the first, as a reflection of the 4 immeasurables. With respect being the key term of Maitri, of loving kindness, deference coming towards compassion, cooperation coming towards sympathetic joy, and obviously ping, the very word used to define here in modern Chinese meaning peace has the ancient meaning of equanimity in the Buddhist text, so which is the fourth immeasurable. So wonderfully done. So I'm so happy I got this chance to think about these deep teachings and their definitions and their genealogy, and I stop with that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor, for bringing those kind of parallels and looking at how syncretic actually humanistic Buddhism is, and how the master managed to bring the kind of cultural concepts into the teaching. And while listening to you, I was actually thinking about, kind of itself, Buddha's Gautama's teachings when he started on his journey, and him coming to, kind of creating the teaching and concepts and actually borrowing the ideas from all the teachings that they're already in the context coming back, like Indian context and Indian teachings. And I was just wondering if maybe you could just draw a little bit more parallels, how we could see kind of Buddhists borrowing those cultural concepts in different times. I don't know whether my question makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, that's a wonderful deep question. There are two aspects that I find really important, going away from my inroads into Yogacara philosophy. The one is expedient means. So expedient means is not just in the Lotus Sutra, obviously, but it's a key Mahayana, skillful means, key Mahayana concept. And Venerable Master does this so incredibly resourcefully here. But the other thing is a key point in Buddhist hermeneutics and the question about Buddhist authenticity. And that has to do with the Buddha saying, Sarva subhashita mama bhashita. So everything that has been said that is expedient towards liberation and enlightenment is actually my word. In other words, in operating in this preliminary sphere of conditionality, anything that points out of it comes from a place of enlightenment and liberation and points to a place of enlightenment and liberation is in complete accordance with the teachings of the Buddha and is in fact Buddha's teaching. And therefore I would suggest to avoid a term like syncretism, because this is not syncretism. It's basically just doing what Buddhism does best, using what is there and transforming it, giving it a new meaning, a new deep chance to be useful for humans in their transformation and their development for themselves and for the ever-growing aspect, like onion skins, ever-growing aspects of around us. Because the more we are in peace in ourselves, obviously, the more it streams out to the wider world.
Yeah. Thank you for those observations. And I was just wondering, as you started kind of touching on those transformations, and thank you for correcting me using a wrong concept. But how when we could, looking at at the master's teaching, use that transformation actually to reach it to the wider communities, wider societies, and actually help that peace and harmony flow and flourish. It's what do I want to say? It just kind of again, like transforming to reach its wider, again taking from one cultural kind of concept and region area to wider society. And I think so that's what kind of our panel is aiming to unpack and find.
What I find so wonderful about this little excavation that I was able to do and enjoyed so much is actually it shows how Venerable Master uses language that is immediately understandable, and for somebody from a Sinophone background would immediately recognize that as part of their societal script. But it is not Neo-Confucian. It is terminology infused in Chinese and Neo-Confucian terms, but it points to something much more transformational, much deeper, because you can see the different aspects of mind. You can see three svabhavas, you can see the four immeasurable, all these things. So that means, in other words, he uses what is there in the culture, and then by infusing it, this deeper Buddhist layer makes it really efficacious for our own transformation. And that is, I think, the beauty of his teachings here.
So do you believe that it's already in such an accessible format that it just needs to be spread wider and it would be received?
Now I understand your question. Okay, so this is a slightly different can of worms. This is wonderfully accessible for the Sinophone sphere. I think there is a question of further translating, of further globalization and localization, that needs to be done slightly away from the from those who have this Sinophone or Semitic background. For that I would look at a second phase or a third phase of humanistic Buddhism that becomes deeper ingrained and enculturated in other cultural paradigms and scripts. Of course, the Western modernist script, but also other cultures around the world. And very important for that is the increasing predominance of English being used in Foguangshan and inviting people from not Sinophile or Semitic backgrounds, Chinese backgrounds, to come and listen and learn from these teachings.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, Professor B, and
thank you,
Ziva, for your question. It's very interesting. Thank you so much, you two.
Thank you so much, Professor. Thank you.
No, thank you for your wonderful questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to invite Dr. Jonathan and Haya. Please unmute yourself.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. We'd like, please start. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Dr. Jonathan Mayer. Thank you to Venerable Miaolong for the invitation to speak at this event. I'm very happy to be able to take part with all of you. I'm a social anthropologist, which means that I study culture by meeting people and taking part in their activities. In recent years, I've been using this method to study humanistic Buddhism as it's taught by Master Xingyun and Foguangshan. Today, as I have only a very short time, I'm going to focus on one thing that I've learned about the way in which Foguangshan promotes harmony at different levels or different scales. In short, it's that practicing cooperation with other people in very simple or even mundane activities can promote harmony at every scale. Let me explain what I mean with an example. One of the activities I've been researching is called the short-term monastic retreat. This activity takes place in various temples around the world once or twice a year, and it lasts 7 days. For this period, up to 1,000 participants are sealed in the temple precincts, and they have no communication with the outside world, no access to mobile phones or computers, and they observe a discipline of noble silence. They live as novice monks or nuns. They're organized into small teams of about a dozen people, and they spend all their time with their teammates, even sleeping in dormitories with them. But they won't know anything about these people because they can't speak to them. During the retreat, much of the participants' time is spent on simple tasks like weeding a garden, cleaning toilets, or even just practicing walking or eating in an elegant fashion. And all of this is always done in their teams. As they do this, the retreat supervisors will remind them to concentrate on their task and to concentrate on their minds. Together with my colleague, Professor James Laidlaw of the University of Cambridge, I've participated in the retreat twice, and we also interviewed former participants. What we found through our experience of taking part in the retreat, and from the interviews, is that the cooperation on these simple, repetitive tasks gave rise to constant feelings of irritation, intolerance, and envy for everybody who was taking part. And we and other participants found that those feelings were, not surprisingly, an obstacle to harmonious cooperation. By staying silent and turning our attention inwards to our minds, we participants improved our awareness of these negative reactions. And having recognized them, it was easy to dispel them, replacing them with feelings of compassion, though they would quickly come back. After the retreat, our interviewees told us that doing this kind of practice for only a week had a great effect on their ability to get on with other people. Husbands said they quarreled less with their wives. Workers said they argued with their bosses less. Several people told us that they found they were resisting the urge to respond angrily to annoying emails, cutting short a possible cycle of retribution. Master Xingyun teaches that the same skill, being aware of aggressive feelings and the ability to overcome them, are at the heart of solutions for problems of disharmony at every level and every scale. Cultivating harmony in this way can help with problems as local as our frustrations with ourselves or our families, to global challenges such as achieving world peace. For example, in environmental and spiritual preservation, Master Xingyun has made a strong case that environmental problems have spiritual causes: greed, envy, and competitiveness. In conclusion then, our ethnographic, anthropological research on Foguanshan ethical practices has shown that humanistic Buddhism, as taught by Master Xingyun, is an important resource for the world because it provides some practical methods for understanding and controlling the sources of disharmony and for promoting harmony at every level. Thank you.
Thanks, John. So, time for me to ask questions. I read your letter published paper before, the imperfect accomplishment, and I think it's very interesting. You just mentioned the everyday things, not like something we can only do in the temple, because our previous speakers mentioned about how can we keep on practicing outside of such kinds of for example, temple, like a short-term retreat, such an environment, because without these vulnerables, can we still keep on to be kind to others, reach out our helping hands? My question is actually, I also joined that retreat because we are both doing social anthropology studies. I was wondering, because I think most of the practice we are taught how to do the way is very much Chinese style, like how we do the meals, how we do the cleaning, and how we tidy our rooms and report to some seniors. How do you think these things can still cross-cultural be applied, to maybe, I mean, in that retreat we have not quite a few foreign different cultures, not very quite traditional Chinese, but it's still I think most of the people still have a Chinese background. So how do you think Foguanshan's humanistic Buddhism can attract people more from different non-Chinese cultures? Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a good question. I think in that retreat, the one that we did together was in Paris. And speaking to some of the venerables who were doing that, they were very worried that maybe the strictness of the discipline in the retreat would put off non-Chinese participants from France or from other European countries. But I actually think that that can be something which is very attractive to people, you know, that for many people, that kind of discipline is something that they might like to challenge themselves with. So I think that might be quite useful. But one of the things that I have been thinking about and discussing with some venerables is the way in which social anthropology or ethnographic research may actually be useful for Guanshan in promoting humanistic Buddhism, promoting the Dharma around the world. And that is to say, what we do as social anthropologists is try to go beyond the idea of cultures at the gross level, at the categorical level. So if you don't mind, I'd like to suggest a different question, which is not to say, how can these appeal to beyond Chinese culture, but rather how can aspects of these practices appeal to different audiences, to different subcultures or different demographics in all of the locations where Foguanshan is trying to promote Buddhism. So, for example, as I say, in every society, there are some people who are very keen on testing themselves with some harsh discipline. And you can find them in Britain or France, just as you can find them in Taiwan. In Taiwan, we found that many of the male participants really enjoyed the retreat because it reminded them of military service. So they were used to that kind of discipline and they liked it. But so in short, then I think the answer to your question is rather than trying to find things that would suit British people in general, or French people in general, or Western people in general, whatever that means, I hope that humanistic Buddhism can develop by really focusing on particular demographics or particular interests.
Thank you very much, and thank you for teaching me updated question.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jonathan and Hayen. Okay, I would like to invite Dr. Wu and Ricky to unmute yourself, please. Ricky.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, Ricky, you good? And Dr. Wu, Douglas, and Dr.
Yes.
Are you on?
Yes, can you hear me?
Oh, yes, can hear you clearly.
Hi, Dr. Wu.
You want to unmute your screen? I mean, your camera, sorry.
Should be unmuted.
Oh, yes, okay, you got. Please, go ahead.
Oh, it's reversed.
Oh,
sorry,
reversed.
It's showing something.
Alex, can you see me?
Yes, I can see you.
Okay.
Okay,
Well,
Dr. William, I'm sorry, Dr. Wall, please.
Yes. Ricky and I agreed that I would give a relatively short introduction and then he would interrogate me thoroughly. I would first like to express my thanks for being invited to take part in this. My thanks to the Venerables and to Xingyun for creating a context in which we can have this discussion. And I have to say, following on from Professor B and Dr. Mayer is a hard act in that B is a skilled exponent of Buddhist philosophy, which is something I do, and Dr. Mayer is a social anthropologist, which is something else that I do. So I'm in a slight corner here. But the first thing I'd like to recognize is that Professor Scherer did a very good job of exemplifying skillful means. And I think there's a tradition in Buddhism of using commentaries to pull out the best possible meaning from a root text. And I think that was a fine example of skillful expounding of what may well have been a hidden set of meanings. I'll come back to the Neo-Confucian terminology. And I think to look at what Dr. Mayer was saying, the use of ritualization here is extremely important. And it goes back to what many people in the West would see as a tension between ritual and meditation, but which within Buddhism is not a tension at all. Both sides happen together. I'd like to take this as Professor Scherer said, originally Neo-Confucian set of terms, and ask where their limits lie, and how, as a group, we could explore how they might need to be expanded and developed in the context of the environmental crisis. These 5 principles that Venerable Master expounded were indeed put forward in a very Chinese cultural framework, beginning with Ren, beginning with the individual, and going all the way up to the state and Shiji, the world. But that's very much an understanding of the human and the world and the stages in between that leaves out all the other living things. Once we get to the level of the Shiji, the world, then yes, we are talking about all living beings. But I think there's an awful lot going on in this list that we could use in interesting ways to find new tools to respond to the present very serious environmental crisis. And I'll just point out a couple of them, and then with luck, Ricky will do a better job of finding a better text in my words than I have put down in the first place, as others have already. So the 2 things I'd like to point out are that in that list, as it's understood, it's an expanding list. It begins with the self, and it moves out to the world. But a key feature of the present environmental crisis is that suddenly the world is very small. It is no longer this infinite space containing all living beings. And I've actually had some very interesting conversations with colleagues and students recently around the question of whether there are bodhisattvas incarnating, whether there are Buddha assemblies happening on other planets right now, since we're doing such a lousy job with ours. But there is a very strong sense in which, as this list was originally framed, Shiji is the biggest possible space. And yet for us now, it is the very limitedness of the world that forces us to rethink ethics. And that then makes me want to look at the middle of that list, the terms that are used in the central 3 elements. So this notion of Jing, Shun, and Xie. How can we use those ideas to rethink our relationship to the environment around us? And all of those, I think, are really powerful terms. A very simple way of thinking about it, for instance, is that when we talk about Jing or Shun, there's this idea that one respects the elder. That in a family, the proper constitution of a family is that there are elders who give advice to juniors, and juniors eventually grow up to be elders and expect respect in their turn. As humans, we're actually quite new on the planet. And it's an interesting thought. What would it mean for us to take the time to very carefully respect fungi? What would it take for us to very carefully respect crocodiles? What would it take for us to very carefully respect viruses? All of whom are much, much, much older than we are. So I'll stop there, but this is what I'd like to do with this list, is to explore and riff on it a little bit and do the kinds of things my colleagues have already done in terms of trying to pull out new possibilities and new meanings that are appropriate to our present predicament.
Thank you, Will. Thank you for sharing us with different thoughts. And I understand that you have conducted field work in Asia for more than 25 years, working with local communities to study medical, ecological knowledge, and Buddhist societies. So in order to help the people in achieving spiritual transformation and world peace by 5 harmonies, how do you think using this to benefit society in a ecological Buddhism way? Is it possible you can give us some example or some useful approach using the 5 harmonies?
Okay. Let's have a look at the idea of family harmony. When we talk about the family here, the jia, then we're thinking about the human family to begin with. That's the Confucian ideal that Venerable Master is picking up, working with, and translating into a Buddhist ideal. And it's a good idea to do that. But who is our family really? In some of the fieldwork that I've done with traditional medicine collectors and indigenous people in the Himalayas and also in Taiwan, there's a very strong sense that family is not just human. Family also includes trees, it includes fish, it includes mountains. You will see poetic language like that in various parts of Buddhism. But what would happen if we really used this as a lever to ask, what is our appropriate behavior towards a forest? What is our appropriate behavior towards a whole ecosystem? You wouldn't, in an ordinary family, cut down your father and burn him for fuel. So how can we use these kinds of approaches to use the Five Harmonies as a way, because they are very powerful tools, how can we use them to rethink our relationship to other than human creatures, and indeed to whole ecosystems or to the whole planet?
Hello?
Yes?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Sorry, I think I missed the last part because the connection is quite bad. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes. So yeah, I think you explained quite well on the heavenly harmonies about how it links to the ecological system as how the society behave as well, and especially the recent problems of the virus. And I think this also link with the social harmonies and world harmonies, because at the end of the day, we want to have world peace and harmonies at the same time. So what's your thought when you first heard of this five harmony concept created by Venerable Master? Does it actually link with your previous fieldwork and study?
Yes, it does, actually. I mean, it's clearly, as others have said, it's a very Chinese way of looking at things. It's a borrowing of Confucian theory, and most of my work has been outside the core Confucian area. So it's been either in the Himalayas or in Taiwan. I've got good friends who are indigenous activists in Taiwan. But these ideas they crop up in many different places. So, for example, the idea that if you were to go into the mountains looking for an important medicine, if you went into the mountains looking for an important medicine in an unpeaceful state of mind, if you were agitated internally, if you did not have the appropriate attitude of respect towards the mountains, the medicine would hide itself from you. And it would be impossible for you to find it. So that's a very different use of these ideas. I think we've got some kind of a feedback echo on someone's system. But it is a similar notion, this idea that having an appropriate attitude towards the beings around you, understanding who is the senior, who is the junior, understanding who's been there first, cultivating internal peace, looking for a harmonious relationship. Those are the kinds of things that you would take with you when you went to look for a valuable medicine in the mountains. And without those, you wouldn't find them.
Thank you so much, Dr. O and Ricky. I think that was very, very interesting. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. 林祖强老师 谢谢 unmute yourself.
谢谢.
And Trace, can you unmute yourself, please?
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, Betsy. Can you guys go ahead and we'll get the other one sorted out, okay?
Okay.
Sure. Okay.
Thank you so much.
I start.
Yes, please.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Lin Zuqiang. I'm a cultural critic based in Paris. Dear friends, it's a great honor for me to join you here today on the occasion of World Interfaith Harmony Week, organized by the United Nations to talk about the promotion of world peace and harmony by interfaith synergy. We are at a turning point of history. People ask for social justice. With the arrival of the digital technology and the consequent revolution of production, service, and social life organization, a balanced and just wealth distribution become a key preoccupation of contemporary world. History reminds us how the 18th century French Revolution happened. That painful memory highlights the importance of a better social harmony through social justice. We need to listen to the voice of people. People ask for systematic sustainability. The world needs a sustainable governance system to defend a sustainable environment, a sustainable demand and offer model, a sustainable education, a sustainable housing, a sustainable medical care, a sustainable elder care. The systematic sustainability is the foundation of the continuity of peace, love, security, happiness, and prosperity of our world, and the efforts to promote, to build, and to push the systematic sustainability will be our legacy for our children and grandchildren. We need to listen to the voice of people. People ask for an adapted capacity to confront world emergencies, such as natural disasters like wildfire and epidemic crises such as coronavirus. The world can no longer afford to collective panic, to administrative ignorance. We need a greater world cooperation because we share the same destiny as a great community. We need to listen to the voice of people. If we can offer ourselves a prepared synergy and world cooperation to satisfy people's need for social justice, systematic sustainability, and coordinated world efforts to improve the major crisis management, the actual values, the actual system which support the functioning of our world community will sustain and will resist better this uncomfortable, unstable, and unpredictable world situation. Being unstable and unpredictable means we are at danger of losing peace and love. At this turning point of history, the interfaith synergy is an important love and peace united force to enlighten world consciousness and encourage the world cooperation, both from governmental cooperation and civil cooperation, to listen to people's voice and work on social justice, systematic sustainability, and more adapted capacity to face world emergencies.